Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast dedicated to helping creative entrepreneurs thrive. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the business of their dreams. Today, I am thrilled to welcome back Kelly Campbell, the first repeat guest on Agency Bytes. Kelly is a trauma-informed leadership coach and the author of Heal to Lead, Revolutionizing Leadership Through Trauma Healing. They're a sacred trauma healing practitioner, writer for outlets like Entrepreneur and Forbes, and their Substack explores the new TLC, Trauma, Leadership, and Consciousness. Kelly's vision is for more than half of humanity to heal its childhood trauma so that we may reimagine and rebuild the world together. And there is no better time for a mission like that. So, Kelly, it is so good to see you again on Zoom or, in the digital and not in the physical realm today. So thanks for joining me again. In the digital and not in the physical realm today. So thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Congratulations on 99 episodes.
Thank you.
What was the episode? The first episode that I was on was what, number 11 for you?
Number 11, December of 2022. I was very much still figuring it out as I am today. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see you. Obviously, I would rather be seeing you in person. But no, this is great.
Yeah, I would love just a lovingly warm embrace. We'll have to make that happen in person soon.
Sounds good.
So much has transpired for you in the past couple of years. A lot, for the world in general, but I get one-on-one time with you here, so I can only focus on what you're up to and some of the changes that you've made in your life, personally and professionally, and accomplishments. It's been always an honor to just kind of follow what you're up to and be a part of what you're up to. Bring us kind of up to speed on some of the milestones and things that you've achieved.
December 2022. So we're talking like literally only 2 years ago. But it really has felt like an entire lifetime in those 24, 25 months. I guess it was the end of April of last year when Heal to Lead came out. And, that in and of itself has been quite the journey. I think, as I said before we hit record, it's kind of old hat now, but even though it's only been out for whatever, 8 months or something. But what a process, really such a cathartic process. And the feedback that I've gotten from people who have read the book, and I know that you're one of them, is that people started seeing themselves differently after reading this book. I think their ability to see themselves in the words that I wrote, in the stories that I shared about myself personally, from my upbringing. And, I feel like my life has been sort of a conglomerate of what a lot of people have experienced, whether that's being a child of divorce or having someone in the family with mental illness or having experienced some kind of abuse when you're younger. These are sort of very common, unfortunately, very, common experiences that we've all had. And what I wanted to highlight in this book is that I came to the realization that those pieces, those parts of who we are that sort of make up the fabric of who we are, that really impacts how we lead other people. And so until we figure out how to lead ourselves and heal some of those things, and when I say heal, I really mean integrate, because we can't change the past. But when we can integrate those things in a really healthy way, we can lead people more effectively. So, yeah.
Define. So it's, and I know you and I've spoken about this, and I've read about integrating that as opposed to you can't change the past and what healing really means. And from a leadership standpoint, whether CEO, corporate, banking, whatever, healthcare, or an agency, how does that help them lead differently or show up differently? Like, talk about what integrate really means as a leader.
Well, first of all, you have to have developed some kind of self-awareness, right? If you are being very reactive, we'll just use a really easy example. If you're being very reactive to people in your organization, as opposed to being thoughtful and responsive, you're not going to engender trust. You're not going to have a culture where people feel really comfortable to come to you with their ideas, their concerns, you know. And so I think the more that you understand what activates you, some people use the word triggers. I use activate, but I think the more that you understand what is activating to you and where that comes from and why you show up the way that you show up, you have the ability to work on that and to change that if you want to. I think part of doing self-development and healing work also means that you're going to naturally be a little bit more vulnerable and more comfortable with that vulnerability. Nothing engenders trust more than a vulnerable leader.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's all of these things. And then I know that you've talked on the show before about, you know, compassion and compassionate leadership. And that's part of this also. And I talk about in here the 4 fundamentals to high conscious leadership. Leading with compassion is really critical, because a little bit different than empathy. Like empathy is like, I feel with you. Compassion, the way that I understand it, is I feel with you and I'm willing to support you within my own boundaries or capacity to do so. And so it's that action orientation that feels really important. A lot of people confuse and conflate empathy and compassion as like just being nice or just being kind, but it's not. It's not. It's really feeling with someone. And, you know, I think, as you said earlier, like now more than ever, this is so critical, because there are a lot of people feeling a lot of big, big emotions and feelings in their personal lives, but also as it relates to their, you know, vocations, their roles within an organization. It's impossible for us to separate who we are at home, who we are when no one else is around, and who we are when we're at the organizations that we work at, even if we're working from home.
Yeah.
Like we're all this, it's all the same thing. And so the more compassionate that you can be as the leader, you know, you're going to essentially create more leaders. You're going to create, as I said, more trust, but it's really going to be about loyalty, less attrition in your company culture, more collaboration among the people that you are leading, because they're going to feel a little bit more unified. They're going to feel a little bit more seen, heard, understood. They're going to feel like they matter. Right? And so I would like to say it doesn't take a special leader to do that. I think it's possible for all of us to become that kind of leader. And a lot of it, in my opinion, has to do with how we deal with our own history, our own past trauma.
I think it takes an intentional leader to show up like that and model that for their team, or, you know, their coworkers or whatever. Is there, like, I don't know, this is probably a silly question, but is there too far beyond, you know, the stoicism, I guess, of leadership, and, you know, emotions don't belong in the workplace, and, you know, things like that, versus the other side of it, where as the boss or the owner or your manager, I'm here to support you? Is there too far that can sway that, you know, kind of, I don't even know how to explain what I'm asking, but
I think I know what you're asking. And the way that I would respond to that is, it's not that it can sway too far. It's that you can be leaning on tendencies of people pleasing, and that's where you can get into trouble.
Yeah.
Right. So, and again, pleasing sort of exists on this spectrum between people pleasing and people controlling. You kind of talk about stoicism and things like that. The people who say like emotions don't belong in the workplace, you're essentially saying, well, humans don't belong in the workplace then, right? So I think that, again, the trauma that we experience when we're younger can absolutely be the foundation of determining whether or not we are on where we are on that spectrum of people pleasing and people controlling. And by the way, we can slide across that spectrum at any moment of any day. It's not that you're locked into one thing. That's why it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, I remember leading my agency and feeling very much like I needed to control certain things. And in the same day, I could be very much worried that an employee might leave. And therefore, I probably allowed, too much of an extension for them for something that they were asking. And there I was leaning into more people pleasing. And so it's really about getting clear on your boundaries, being really transparent. I think kind is considerate,
Yep.
right? So, or clear, I should say clear is considerate. So the clearer that you are about what you're willing to accept and not accept and how, clearly you communicate that is super important. And then holding to it.
Yeah.
And I think inside of those kind of guardrails, it's a lot easier for people to treat other people very well.
Yeah. Yeah. When we started to segue into this, we said now more than ever. And so this will come out the week of February 17th, 2025. Last year during 2024, the industry as a whole was kind of on edge. There was, concern about an election year, and then how that impacts client spending and agency growth or agency, stability even. And so more than half the agencies that I know had really rough years last year, had to let people go. I know a handful that had to shut down, and then another, the other half that had stable years or growth years. And so we've got a new administration that half the country didn't want, and for, I think, very strong reasons. It wasn't like a maybe yes, maybe no. It was this is not at all what I want in my life. And so as employers and employees feeling uneasy about the changes that are happening in this country, like what you're talking about, how leaders can show up and be supportive compassionately for their employees as they're figuring out, how do I respond to the changes in the world that are pretty much kind of out of my hands at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, the changes in the world are out of their hands, but how they operate inside of the walls of their company, or
Yep.
I shouldn't say walls anymore, inside of their companies,
Yep.
That's very much in their control.
Absolutely.
And, having agency of your agency,
Yeah.
I think that's really important, because no matter what's going on outside, I mean, I'm assuming that most of the people listening to this don't have 500, 5,000 person agencies, right?
Right.
So yeah, you have so much more control, and you're not actually relegated to whatever, regulations and things, are there for different size businesses. So you get to do and lead and operate and care for your people in the ways that you see fit.
Yep.
And, I saw this, it's different, when last year when we saw so much of this like anti-DEI kind of movement stuff, there were a lot of universities that had to remove those things because otherwise they would lose their funding.
Right.
Well, we're not in that same place, from a small business standpoint. So just because, I don't want to get political here, but just because there are certain things that might be coming down the pike that might change the way that we have to view certain things, or I shouldn't say it like that. Just because there are certain things that might legally change in the zeitgeist, like, we don't have to subscribe to those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we can really lean in to show our employees how much we do support them and how much of a supportive growth environment we can create inside of our companies.
Yeah. What are some of the activities that you can kind of see unfolding at some of these small businesses, agencies, that would help owners, leaders be more supportive of their team through these tougher times?
Well, from my perspective, it's going to always be about leaning into really supporting the employees, because the employees are their output is what you're selling.
Yep.
Right? It's a service-based business. So leaning into whatever they need, whether that be more transparent conversations, whether that be, making sure that the benefits that you offer include therapy and other kind of modalities, maybe, incentivizing things that are, in the realm of making sure that people take care of themselves really well, normalizing the mental health day, the mental wellness day.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot that, again, back to when COVID happened and the murder of George Floyd and all of these kinds of things that were pretty, that really rocked us as a nation. I think this incoming president is going to rock a lot of people, because people are scared, and regardless of who you voted for, you can't deny that, that there's fear in the collective. So I think acknowledging that and making sure that you are supportive of your employees. And listen, if you're not supportive of your employees, first of all, I don't think you'd be listening to this particular show. But if you're not, then they will leave. Like that's not fear mongering. That's not projection. Like that's just what will happen.
Yeah.
Because people they're not going to stay where they're not welcome.
Yeah. Well, where they're not supported, where they're not seen, they're our greatest investment. If I'm going to spend 50 to 70% of my all-time revenue on these people that are going to deliver hopefully the best quality work so that we continue to get more work.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take care of them, whatever. It's like, I don't want to compare to animals, but having a racehorse that you're like not going to feed the best quality, horse food or whatever. Like, yeah, why wouldn't you take good care of your people and build the loyalty? And even if it's not a business, they're humans and they have hearts and souls and they need to be nurtured. And so, whether you treat them like something that's generating revenue for you or a human, either way, it's important to do so. And I got to spend some time with a client 2 weeks ago, helping them build kind of a resource guide for their employees of different services like you're talking about, and just making it available. They have an internal wiki that they use as kind of their resource page for, on Notion, how to run the agency, but also here's how do you take care of yourself too. And flex hours and things like that, like you mentioned. So there's a lot of creative ways to show up and be supportive. In, I also have clients and spoken to agency owners. They're like, that's not my place, but I'll give them the opportunity to take extra time or whatever. And so I guess that goes to kind of what I was trying to think of before, is like, at what point is there a line where it's like, I don't, as the owners, show up that way, but the employees have the ability to do what they need to do to take care of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's an opportunity for owners to do something different, to take a risk, to be courageous. I think you and I agree that it's important to encourage that and push those people kind of towards that ledge, if not off of it, to, do what they can to take care of their people. So what are your other thoughts on how, I guess, agencies are changing or shifting for the better? Again, maybe it's around what's going on, with the government, but just changes in 2025 for how agencies are doing things differently or embracing change.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see that yet. I don't know exactly, because everything feels like there's so much variability, and we don't know. This is coming out in mid-February, right? But right now we're recording this a couple of days after the inauguration. So we don't know.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot that remains to be seen. Again, I would say, like, agency owners that really believe in doing the right thing by their people, they understand the value that those people are bringing to the organization and doubling down on doing whatever they can to support them. That feels like the only way forward. But that's just my perspective, right? I have seen much larger agencies, some of the CEOs of those that I work with, getting gobbled up. There's going to be, I think about it, we have billionaires running the country. So there's going to be maybe a little bit more normalization of, like, monopolies, but that's at the larger level, which might create some opportunity for some of the smaller businesses, the smaller agencies. So that might be a positive thing, but again, I don't know that.
Yeah.
And I think that, there are a lot of organizations, which would be the client organizations, that because there's so much disorder, let's call it, happening right now, right? There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of variability. There might be more risk takers who seize that opportunity to create things that are a little bit more bold, are a little bit more kind of in your face, a little bit more progressive, because that's how they feel they can, sort of, I don't want to use the word activism, but that's how they feel that they can sort of stand up for what they believe in and what their values are. So we might see some more interesting projects, more progressive projects coming from clients. I could see a world in which that would be the case. And then also you'll see the opposite, because there will be a lot of clients who do pull back. They don't want to be as progressive. They're worried about backlash from demographics that they serve or something like that. Yeah. So I think there's going to be, just like there is in our country, division. I think we're going to see more division from clients. Yeah. In terms of budgets and risk taking.
That's interesting. There was a huge discussion in an agency Facebook group that I was in about large AORs going to large AORs that are service specific, like digital AORs, things like that, to smaller, more nimble agencies and taking them away from the holding companies, because these smaller companies are willing to take more of a chance, be a little more riskier in what the platform is that they get to leverage for their clients, whereas the larger agencies are politically tied, but not like tied to a party, but like tied to the concern of, if we, step outside the confines of what's safe, we're taking too big of a risk. So smaller agencies I'm seeing get more of a chance at, of at bats with larger, AORs, larger contracts. I think Tropicana was one of them. There's a couple others that Ad Age had written about. So I laud that. Like, I'm all for it. Like, give them a chance. Let them shine. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, so industry aside, what's big on the vision board for you this year?
This year, I am getting into retreat facilitation. So running retreats for leaders who are interested in doing their own healing work. Maybe they've been interested in that, but they don't really have a community or a place where they can do that, other than maybe they're going to therapy or something like that. So I'm calling them like healing leadership retreats. So I'll be doing a few of those this year, and a couple of speaking engagements for different nonprofits and corporate teams, and just coaching and doing my own one-on-one work with individual clients. So I like to diversify the portfolio, as they say.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. There might be a new house on the horizon, but TBD.
Exciting.
Interest rates are a little crazy right now, so
yeah, pump the brakes. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll see. But other than that, I'm just feeling good in my body and building community.
Yeah.
That is my number one thing this year, whether that's through retreats or in my personal life or however I can do that. I think building community is part of resistance, and being joyful and playful, which has been historically difficult for me, because I can be pretty serious and really kind of focused. But I think the reminder that building community and being in joy are two things that are very accessible to us at any given moment. And it's really a choice whether we step into that or not. So that's what I'm focused on this year.
I love that. I think seeing you as a facilitator is just a natural, kind of element of what you do and who you are and like how you show up for people. So that makes perfect sense. I can see that.
Yeah.
What do you do, like, through your day-to-day activities to kind of help keep you feeling safe and grounded, and showing up for people is exhaustive? So how do you regenerate yourself?
Yeah, I love that question. So I have a really beautiful daily practice in the morning, which kind of involves a lot of spirituality and meditation, journaling. It's like a full hour to hour and a half every morning. And for me, that's just time that's not negotiable. I that changes how I can show up for the rest of my entire day and how I can show up for people. So it's really kind of nourishing internally. And I know people might say, like, I don't have an extra hour, hour and a half. That sounds crazy. But for me, it's like scheduling a meeting that I will not miss.
Yep.
And feels really important. And then gym, I can go back to the gym next Sunday, I think, is
Great.
my back to the gym day, because I'm just recovering. So, I'm really excited about that. And, I think for me, given all the recent changes with social media, for me, it's going to be really taking a huge step back actually from social media. I haven't had a Facebook account in years because why? Um, but a lot less time on Instagram. And I actually made a decision to get off of LinkedIn for 1 year as a trial.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is my LinkedIn free year. I'm going to see how it feels and if I would like to go back to it at the end of this year or not. But it just feels like I want to create more space.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's
Interesting.
Yeah.
I also have a morning routine, and it's not an hour and a half, but
Mm-hmm.
it's on an ideal day, it's 20 minutes to a half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I get friends that are like, "Oh, how do you do that?" And I said, "Well, it started with 5 minutes." And so to those that say, oh, "I don't have an hour or an hour and a half," you've got 20 minutes that you're sitting on social media when your toilet trip could have been 4 minutes. It's 20 minutes. So like we find the time when it's important to us. And when we say yes to other things, we have to say no to certain things. And so it's about priorities. So I'm fully right there with you as well. And it's non-negotiable. Like even when we were in Vermont last weekend, it's like I get up before everybody and I have my alone time and I read some things and I do some meditating and I start my day properly. And, to me, it's vital. So yeah, I get that as well. And I think there's no wrong way to build a routine like that. It's just a matter of start somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't have a routine that I was consistent with last year. And of any year in my life, I really needed it last year. And so I noticed the difference.
Yeah.
And so now that, this year is feeling really good for the most part, that, building in that routine and being really committed to that, I think commitment is a huge thing. Nobody really talks about that.
Yeah.
But that discipline and I don't think of it as, oh, I have to get up and do this. It's like, I get to be in this body.
Yes.
I get to be alive. So I'm going to get up and then I get to do this routine, which feels nourishing and, like, dare I say, luxurious,
Yeah.
And that might mean that I get up earlier than some people. Or maybe I start my workday a little bit later than some people, but either way, it's got to be prioritized.
Yeah. I am of the get to mindset for almost everything,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it was after losing Maya or whatever it was, but there was a shift for me where it was like, I have friends that are parents like, oh, I got to drive my kid. I'm like, you get to drive you get to do all these things. I think about who doesn't get to do those things, and anything that like is in my life, it's there for a reason. And so it's an opportunity, it's a gift, and I get to be a part of whatever it is,
Yeah.
labeled positive, labeled negative, whatever. Like, yeah, it's such a gift. I'm also like thinking about, wow, not being on LinkedIn for a year. To me, that's not the space that creates anxiety or drama. Like that's just a business place. And so I'm curious, report back in a year, like, does that impact business for you? How does that just kind of change the
Yeah,
course of your funnel?
I'm definitely a person who likes to push edges.
Mm-hmm.
And so when everyone was sort of thinking about like a 4-day work week, I was experimenting with a 3-day work week. Right. And now I'm at 2.5. But for me, it's like, yeah, it is the Facebooks and the TikTok and Instagram that might be causing, a lot of dysregulation in people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go in a slightly different direction and question. We're told that we have to be on LinkedIn for business. And I'm not sure that that's true.
Yeah.
So this is my experiment.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful risk. And if it's one less thing that you need to commit your time to or indulge in or participate in, conversations or chatter, then why not?
Yeah. Well, I love writing, and I really love the short form writing, Substack. I spend a pretty good amount of time. I wanted to spend a lot more time in 2024. And so when I looked at my whole sort of schedule and just daily practice of what I was putting my energy into, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here on different social platforms, it adds up.
Yep.
And so I thought, okay, well, going back to, I want to be clear and clean and like really boundaried. What if I just completely removed one platform? I didn't think I could do that with Instagram because of, there are connection points that I have, unfortunately, on that platform that I'm not willing to remove myself from.
Yep.
Not to say that I don't have a lot of connection points on LinkedIn, but if I was going to be able to literally step back completely 100% from one platform, it felt like LinkedIn was the one I could do that from. And I wanted to replace that with writing for Substack.
Yeah.
And that's a place for me where it's an additional revenue stream, right? So I have paid subscribers. And so whatever I made last year, my goal was to triple that this year.
Great.
And so the only way to triple that is to create more really good content. Yeah. If my head is clearer and I'm not spending time on LinkedIn, well, then Substack is going to get all of my energy from a
Love that standpoint. Yeah, lean into it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hold you hostage for too long. Let's segue that into where can people find you on Substack and support your triple X revenue?
So on Substack, it's kellylcampbell.substack.com, or you can just search for the new TLC. And then my website is just klcampbell.com.
And that'll be in the show notes also. Before we wrap up, a couple of random questions for you. I had a new set from previously, but the first is, what is something that you have leaned into as a hobby that you just can't get enough of these days?
I have gamified increasing my protein to 180 grams a day. And I'm obsessed.
Okay, great.
It's all in support of my return back to the gym. And
Perfect.
So I'm pretty excited about it.
I'm excited for you. What's a tool that you recently integrated into your life that you look back and think, how did I live without this widget or whatever the thing is?
I don't want to say, like, I don't want to use the AI tool answer, although it's probably true. What is a tool that I use? I don't use a lot of tools, I gotta say. All right, I'll give my real answer, which is I am a little bit of an astrology geek.
Cool.
So I really like, there's 3 apps that I look at for about, 3 minutes a day in the mornings after my daily routine. So the Chani app, Chani Nicholas, the Pattern, and CoStar, which are 3 astrology apps. Very awesome. Interesting how they're 3 totally different things, and they all seem to be giving very similar information, which for me feels like confirmation.
Very cool. And then finally, what is a piece of advice that you would give younger version of Kelly?
Oof. Oh, you're gonna leave this as like the mic drop, inner child healing moment. Okay. My piece of advice would be, it doesn't matter what anyone else says or does or thinks or perceives about you. Not only do you matter, but you impact a lot of people.
So true. Kelly, I am super grateful for your time, for your wisdom, for everything you get to share with us. Thank you so, so much for everything. Can't wait to see you and hug you in person soon.
That sounds amazing. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.